So today's the day that I'm going to apply the TotalBoat high performance epoxy resin and hardener to the deck of the boat. Any of the horizontal surfaces that have not been epoxied or varnished are going to be addressed today, including the vertical transom. Decided I'm going to do the transom. In preparation, I've taped around the sheer rub rail. This is oak. It was bedded with dolphinite and then fastened and then plugged. So this I'm considering a expendable, abused, moving part that I'm not going to epoxy. With the bedding compound, there's no way I can give a good coverage with that epoxy and expect it not to crack. So that's been expected all along. So the tape is there to protect the oak stained rub rail from the epoxy that I'll apply today. And I'm not going to be doing this sloppy. It's going to be done neatly with a brush, and then the next two coats, there's 3 total, will be done with a foam roller, then tipped out. The other things I did is I over drilled the holes so that the epoxy will go down in, and then when I go to put the hardware back on the deck and on the transom, I will re-drill those holes. So now that screw hole or fastener hole is now epoxy filled, and the screw will be going into an epoxy film versus into the wood, which will give you another access point for water and moisture. So trying to do the best I can to keep this deck completely sealed. And it'll also have bedding compound or some sort of compound that will not allow water to even get to the fastener hole and even try to get into that epoxied hole. I'm also going to go around the inside of the bow light and horn holes to seal those areas where the plywood has been perforated with a drill, and so that also is sealed. And then they have rubber grommets which protect the wires that go up and down. So there's a couple things I've done there. So I'm going to get at it. I've done 6 pumps because I just did an epoxy cloth application with a friend on his boat, and 6 is just a really good, it's volume that you can control before it starts to kick and then get hard. So I've decided I can always go make more. So I just got a really nice Ace brush. These I put in a bath of epoxy, or excuse me, denatured alcohol, and I can get at least 3 to 5 applications in one day from these brushes without having to throw them away. So I'm really happy that I was able to save some money and not have to have that many brushes. So what I'm doing, this stain is sat for 2 full days. I used a Lake Oswego gel stain, post-war Chris Craft red, and I'm going to put this on, and it'll go probably for 2.5 to 3 hours before it's dry, and then I'll go ahead and put the 2nd and 3rd coats following in succession at those hour breaks. And what I want to do is just get it tacky like cellophane tape. And then I will have a full day of drying for this. I'm just tipping out the bubbles that are appearing. And we will have a deck that has probably the equivalent of 9 coats of varnish on it, but a top coat that is not going to break down if it's taken care of. Then I'm going to put a set of white lines on this deck. They were on here originally. I'm going to put them back. And I will then let that dry a full day, and then I will put another 3 coats of this clear high performance epoxy on over the white lines, and they will be flush. I've done a test on a test panel. So I'll have 6 coats of epoxy on this deck, which will give it plenty, I think, of protection against abrasion. It will have 6 coats of UV filter epoxy to keep not only the wood but the stain looking good for years. And then I will put 3 coats of Petit clear varnish, which will again give it more protection, but also give the owner a chance to see a breakdown in the surface well before it gets to the epoxy. So she will have the opportunity to have someone or herself go ahead, lightly sand and scuff those 3 coats of varnish, and then put her new 3 coats back on and be fine. So in theory, in Dan Lee's video series, if you haven't purchased it, you should. It's quite good. He talks about with that the 3 coats or minimum according to Petit, he used Epifanes, so it was a little bit different product. You can get several years of protection with 3 coats and up to 10 if you were to get 9 coats of that. So with 6 coats of epoxy, 3 coats of the Petit clear varnish, I should be fine, and the owner will have many years of trouble-free finish to worry about on this boat. And I think that's a goal for her. I mean, nobody likes to varnish that I know. I do have a piece of plastic inside the bilge foredeck area so that I can do those holes and not worry about anything coming through down there that is going to splash up my varnish job already. So that's protected. With the brush and roller, I'm going to be very careful not to get anything on this beautiful interior. So if you're wondering why I don't have plastic down, I'm going to be very careful. I'm just going to get the rest of the bubbles out of here. Pull it, tip it, and I will keep doing the deck and doing this all day. So here I go. Well, that concludes coat number 1 of 3. I did the transom as well, As expected, it's curtaining a little bit, meaning it's drooping. The weight of the material, like heavy varnish will do that too, or paint. This is heavier than the varnish, so it's drooping a little bit in the back, and so I've been working it. It will get sanded. It's not a huge deal, just, you know, you love smooth if you can. I think when I go to do the rolling, not only will it be faster, because this took about, I guess, 2.5 hours to do the whole top and then transom. The second coat and third coat go on faster because it's smoother, number one, less grain. That's why I use the brush on the first application against the grain and then with the grain to get it in the grain, make a nice surface. And then the second coat and third coat go on with a roller. It's smoother, you're just tipping, it goes pretty quick. So I'm sure that time and quantity will go down quite a bit in the second and third applications. The key is to wait until this is cellophane tape sticky. You just put your finger, like here's a spot where I know there's hardware going. It's close. Usually 2.5 to 3 hours, it's good. I even turn the heat up to 70 degrees Fahrenheit to try to move it along a little faster, and we'll see if that works or not. It seems to be working better. When I leave the epoxy in my pot, 5 or 6 pumps, I think there's heat in there because it's a thermo chemical. The heat is keeping it more flowable for me as I move. So if you move quickly, the thermo is not bad. It's making it turn faster, meaning getting harder, but it also keeps it a little more smooth. Versus in the tray, I noticed it was getting kind of thick faster than I thought it should be. When I do the roller, you do it so quick, you don't even really notice it. The brush is the slowest part of the 3 applications. So I'm gonna let that tack up, and then I'll go ahead and I just start in the same place and follow my same pattern and do that 2 more times, and then we let it rest all night. Well, here it is after the 3rd coat, rolled and tipped. It really has filled in the grain, as you can see. There's going to be some, and that's where the varnish will come into play. Once I get this sanded down, I need to put on the tape for the white lines, and I'll put 3 more coats on. So the boat's going to have plenty of epoxy on it, especially the deck when I get done. And then the transom, because it did curtain and sag, I'm going to just address that all by itself, and I'll let that cure, and then I'll sand it, and then try again with coat number 2, and just see if I can pay attention to it, maybe keep it from doing that. But I think the vertical surface and the weight of the epoxy is just going to make that really difficult. So I'll keep working on that, and on to the white lines. It's the next day, and I've let the high performance epoxy by TotalBoat dry for, I think I put the last coat on almost 18 hours ago. So and it's really hard. It doesn't surprise me. So now I have to start to flatten it back. Now this is a little different than the parts I did before, where I flattened them out as much as I could before you really get close to the stain level. And then I went ahead and put the varnish on in multiple coats after that. This gets flattened back, keyed up, meaning it will give some mechanical tooth to the 4th coat of epoxy, which after I put on the white stripes for the deck, it'll get 1, 2, 3 again, and I'll be able to key up that before I do the varnish. So there's going to be a lot of epoxy on the deck, and I'm going to have to take some of it off, obviously, to get it flat. And So I have to do that first, and then I'll follow up today with my fine line tape by 3M to do my stripes layout, so this boat will get a nice set of stripes on it. It wasn't here when I got it. I did find them on this edge of the dashboard. I found the original white lines, so I was able to verify that they're 2.5 inches, and now I can go ahead and put those back on. So I just go ahead and use 320. That's my first grit for epoxy. I'm not going to use an orbital because I have to get, there's a little bevel to the deck, very little room here on the side decks to even bother with an orbital. So I'm just going to key it up with my 320 grit and my foam pad and get this ready for tape. I've sanded down the third coat of the epoxy, high performance epoxy I put on from TotalBoat yesterday, and I got it flat enough where I know I could put down my fine line tape by 3M for painting the white lines on the deck. The measurements I was able to find from the original finish, I could still see it on the very back edge. So I know what I'm measuring to, and then what I do is take my fine line tape, and I marked both ends of this deck, and I put the tape on the bottom edge for me, and I just take it, and I'm going to sight it. So I have these 1 inch, I have 8 inch, 1/8 inch detail tape too from 3M that I can use for my spacing. I usually just try to find the line first, fore and aft, to make sure it looks good, because you can measure all you want, and if it's not right to the eye, then it's going to look crooked. So this one looks pretty good. And I leave the tape somewhat loose. I just attach it on the ends until I'm ready. And I take these 1/8 inch tabs and I just kind of put them in there for reference. This tells me that I can pretty close to getting a 1/8 inch white line when I'm done. Then I also, again, I go back and make sure I have what looks to be a straight line, because no one's going to care if you measured it and said, oh, that's it, if it looks bad. Then I'll go back and I look at it again, and I can see there's a little belly. You just have to figure out which one of those is not the best, and then go ahead and I can see it. I know it's going to be this one. So I'm going to cut my tape. And then I might play with that a little bit, just to make sure it's exactly the way I want it. I can see it's a little wide here, so you can take another piece of tape and put it in the middle and help. And I've done that. And then I'll go back and again, sight it till I get it the way I like it. And then I go back and you put it down with your thumb, and then the edge that's going to get the paint, I take like this Swanson carpenter's pencil, but it's plastic and it's rounded on the end, and you push down on that edge that is going to be where the white line is, because that will be the one that has to be down as tight as you can make it. And this fine line tape is really cool because you can press on it and it gets dark, so you can see if there's any space under there that's going to let paint in, which you don't want. Take the time to put all this tape down and spend the money on the tape, and then the paint. And the last thing you want is paint creeping under there if you can avoid it. And when I get the paint done, I'll let that sit for a few hours, just so I know that it won't run if I pull the tape, and then I pull that tape up and you're done. So back to work. Well, there you go. Probably one of the most satisfying steps of restoring a boat is putting the white lines back on, or yellow or orange, whatever your boat calls for. So the next step will be to let this dry overnight and then go ahead and put a 3 more coats of epoxy over the top. And in my test panel I did the 3rd coat over the white lines. It's as flat as the deck was when I started today. And that will always protect these lines from abuse and anything else that comes our way, in addition to the 3 coats of clear epoxy, 3 coats of clear varnish that will be on top. It should be very well protected. So moving on to the next step. Here is the boat deck 24 hours after the last or 3rd coat of high performance epoxy by TotalBoat. I think it came out pretty good. Again, the goal is to take the place of up to 9 coats of traditional varnish. So I think I've gotten there. Unfortunately, now I have to take it off with I'm going to use 220 grit on my soft block pad and take it down so it has a flatter surface, being very careful not to hit my white lines. Remember, I've got 3 coats under the white lines and 3 coats of epoxy on top of the white lines to protect them, keep them white. And then I'll go ahead and put on a 2-part clear varnish from Epifanes that will adhere to this epoxy. So off to work. Well, I've added the Epifanes 2-part varnish. It's just, I think, new to their line, and it's made to adhere better to epoxy surfaces like I used on the deck. So I waited a little bit and got some of that after watching Dan Lee's new boat video where he talked about this new product that had come out with Epifanes. And I'm so glad I used it. It really looks like epoxy, but goes on like varnish. And I think it's been 3 hours total, and it's already hard. So you're able to do a 3-hour turnaround on this, which I'm not going to do. I'm going to let it cook for a day and then do my scratching or sanding. I do that even with the petted high build. I just found that when I use high build varnishes of any kind, it seems to always be really gummy on the paper, not wet, but just so much. So I'm going to just follow my pattern from before and do sanding in between, but I'm really happy with this new product. It really smells. So when I put my respirator on, I was glad I did when I opened the cans, because I've smelled some bad, like polyester resin and stuff. That's pretty toxic. I mean, it just stinks. This stuff, you're a little worried about what's in there, but it's something you should have your vapor respirator on. Make sure that those filters are new. But it went on so well, I would highly recommend using it, and I will be using it going forward in all of my boat projects. You can even use it on non-epoxy surfaces, so I would give that a thumbs up. The petted high build goes on so thick, you know you got a lot of sanding ahead of you. Yes, this might have gone on thinner with less buildup, but boy, I really like it on top of epoxy. This went over white lines, and I'm trying to build up a little bit so these white lines are smooth, and they're almost smooth already. And this is before, there's 3 coats of clear that go on top of this. So there'll be 3 coats of this and then 3 coats of clear that will give it a really nice UV rating and really make it shine. And these white lines will be completely below the surface and smooth. So that will be the end of this episode. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Every 2 weeks on Wednesday morning, you'll get an update that a new video is dropped. If you would like to hit the like button, much appreciated. I always like to see the likes and the comments, both positive and questions, which are fine. I like answering questions. And I will see you in 2 more weeks. Thank you.